I mean, I know you do you do a lot of municipal court, and you do.
I just do
DUIs.
DWI. Yeah,
Yep.
and I actually I changed the name of my firm instead of just Levow and Associates or whatever it was over the years to Levow DWI Law, and I did that for the very specific reason so that people would not call and say, "Hey, can you handle this will?" Or I could say to my friend, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to help you." But I just can't, because that's not what I do.
I can unless you get a DWI. If you get a DWI, I can assist you.
It's not the best, representing your friends, but it does happen. So, I wanted, it was a risk, obviously, to pigeonhole into just such a tight genre, as it were. But as it turns out, there's plenty of work to go around.
So let's talk about New Jersey LAP, which is the New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program.
This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.
I'm excited today to speak to Dr. Defne Ekin and lawyer Evan Levow. We are starting the season off with jumping into discussing lawyer wellness, which is sort of where we ended last year. Defne Ekin is a clinician for the New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program, and Evan is a DWI attorney, and I would say expert in DWIs in New Jersey. Definitely someone that I would call and ask my questions if I needed some insight. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just start with, if you've ever listened to any of the Mighty MERP podcasts, I always like to ask individuals' origin stories and sort of how you ended up where you are. So, Defne, I'm going to ask your origin story, which is always sort of where you came from, where you were born. Did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor? Did you always know that you wanted to be working with attorneys, and sort of how you ended up where you're at right now?
Well, thank you. Listening to your podcast, that actually is one of my favorite questions, because I am always surprised at the twists and turns people's careers have taken and where they've come from. Origin story for me is I am originally from Turkey, and I graduated from college there. Did I always know I wanted to be a psychologist? I always say that I've been very lucky to figure out what direction I needed to get in. And I always say that it was my desire to try and figure out, like, what should I major in? And the college system in Turkey's, at least at that time, was different, where you had to like rank order a bunch of different disciplines and colleges, and whatever you got in, that was it. And I was actually hoping that my parents would tell me like what I should do so that I didn't have the decision fatigue. But I'm very lucky because they never did. And my mom said, well, I mean, I guess think about what you like. And that was a pretty easy answer for me. I said, people. And I proceeded to rank order a bunch of psychology, sociology, and anthropology departments, because they were like the social sciences that had to do directly with people. I am so glad I landed in psychology, because I've taken sociology and anthropology courses. As much as I like them, I don't think I would have had as much of a passion. So when I finished college, it was pretty clear to me that I wanted to specialize in something, because that's sort of what you need to do after studying psychology. It's such a broad field. And I knew that I wanted to come to the States and get educated here for a master's at first. And I had this great interest in working with people, their relationships with work, motivation, burnout. And I was like, okay, organizational psychology, that's it. I did enjoy clinical psych kind of things while I was in undergrad, but I knew that I wanted to work with people in their sort of daily lives and sort of deal with the psychology of that. So it seemed like a easy next step, and I came to New York to study at Teachers College, Columbia, for a master's in organizational psychology. And it was a disaster because I sat down and I was like, oh gosh, I landed up in like some business school kind of thing. And it just like a lot of people from the business school were also taking classes from organizational psychology. And granted, the first class I had to take, the first lecture was a particularly businessy kind of class. It was like functions of organizations or something. So I was terrified. I said, like, I made the worst choice. This is it. What am I going to do? And I said, okay, like, give it a chance, take a deep breath. And I realized that because I was in the Department of Social, Organizational, and Counseling Psychology, I was like, okay, I will take the minimum number of courses from organizational psychology. And then, they have these department-wide courses, right? So I ended up taking a lot of counseling courses, and I just loved it. Most people don't know the difference between clinical and counseling psychology. And the long and short of it is we deal with people across the lifespan as counseling psychologists, and we are very proudly focusing not just on what's going wrong, but also, and perhaps even more so, on what's going well. And we're very attentive to resilience and sort of making things work. And you do not have to be like dealing with some major psychopathology. So I loved that.
Right.
Like it combined this part about like, I wanted to work with people who weren't dealing with major psychiatric crises. I found that, but that wasn't what I wanted to specialize in. So fast forward, I went to NYU. I got a PhD in counseling psychology, where I really just faced another identity crisis because once I graduated, I was like, I really like academic stuff, but I also love working actually with people. So for a very long time, I would say, for about 10 years, no, wait, for about 20 years. Math becomes harder after a point,
Time, it's
I
weird the
know,
way
it
it
is
works
really weird.
out.
So I somehow managed to straddle both worlds. I had like an academic life and I had a practice life. And somewhere in all of my practical training, I ended up developing this great connection to working in the field of addiction. And that was completely accidental as well. Typical rounds go in a facility where there are new clients, and they say like, oh, so we have like 3 new people. Who's gonna take them? And anytime there was someone with like an alcohol or drug issue, it was dead silent. None of the interns wanted to touch it, and I was like, I'll take it. And then next thing I know, I was just like, this is a great therapy population. There was like so much motivation to get well, so much confusion about like, how did I even get here? So that's how I developed my desire to work more and more with addiction. And so post PhD, I have done a lot in addictions. And I realized, addiction just does not affect the person alone. There's the family and everybody else around them. So that led me to get a postgraduate degree for 2 years at the Ackerman Institute for the Family. It was a wonderful experience. So I eventually went through hospitals, private clinics, and then landed, and all in the meantime doing academic work. I was faculty at Adelphi, and then I went back to Columbia as a faculty member, which was a real fun thing to do. And so after a while, it really felt like I just wanted to get back into research, working with people on finding ways of figuring out relapse prevention. So I went to Mount Sinai and I started working on research with uh, yeah, brain research on addiction. And I also ended up being asked to cover a maternity leave position for physician health, which was a very interesting combination of, like, if you think about the origin story, I wanted to work with people, their work issues, burnout, and there I was, like, years later, totally randomly back in that. And I loved it. It was just really nice to work with these, like, physicians and dealing with their stresses of that kind of work. And then next thing I know, that was a limited term thing, and I went back to my private practice a little bit. My career has ebbed and flowed based on what I thought my kids needed, you know, a little bit more of the mom side, a little bit more of the academic. I had a lot of flexibility, which I appreciate. So one day I actually, this is the funny part, where I was looking for an internship for my oldest daughter, trying to be like, let's see what's out there. And I saw this position at New Jersey Lawyers Assistants. I'm like, what is that? And it
That's
was
funny because my question is like wondering in my
how
mind
did
is
we get there,
now, how
right?
did we get to New Jersey Lab? How
Right.
did you,
It was one of those things where I was like, I'm only going to go back to another organizational setting if I feel I'm really drawn to the purpose. And I saw this posting and I was like, something about it really spoke to me. And I was like, I'm just going to click it and see. And there it was. I totally forgotten I even, like, applied to that position. I get a call. We hit it off. It's a wonderful team. It's a great purpose. And over a year and a half later, I'm here loving it, coming up with new programming.
right? And you told your daughter that she couldn't apply to this job. You said, this one's mine,
Well,
right?
this wouldn't have been like for her anyways, but why was I even on LinkedIn? I was just like trying to see, like, what kind of things are out there for these kids, because really people finding where their passion is and settling somewhere is harder and harder, it seems.
No, I actually, before Evan, you've had some time to think about your origin story. I'm going to ask you about yours in a second. But as you were talking, Defne, I was thinking that when you said you wanted your parents to just tell you, I thought, oh my goodness. I mean, I have 4 kids, in college and post-college and in graduate school, and none of them want me to tell them anything. They want to, like, figure it out all on their own, which I thought was interesting. But it's funny that you took so many different turns and you ended up
Right.
sort of where you thought you wanted to be to begin with. So that's
Exactly.
great.
Exactly.
So Evan, did little Evan on the playground at 10 say, I am going to be not only a lawyer, but a DWI expert?
I probably was known for arguing with my mother and siblings, and but I don't know it. In fact, I didn't decide to go to law school until last minute, last semester. I love to travel, so I was taking comparative literature courses in England, and I figured I would just be an English professor. But I decided to go to law school, and pretty much right away I was interested in mostly just criminal law, constitutional. So I graduated from Rutgers in Camden, and ironically, I just taught a class there.
Yeah.
On New Jersey Municipal Court. So, I clerked for a judge in Camden County. I got out of the clerkship a little early to start my criminal defense career with another lawyer who was doing a capital murder case, and I hooked up. Pretty bad word. I associated with civil attorney as well. So I got both sides of it. I was trying personal injury cases and was bored silly and just really liked the criminal side and liked the municipal court side, getting into more specialty stuff. And kind of I don't know if it's a funny story or bizarre. I ended up doing DWI because so a lot of lawyers, and I don't want to trash my fellow brethren and sistren, a lot of lawyers dabble in different things, don't necessarily specialize, and then don't necessarily do the right thing to take something to the nth degree, which is really what should be done in every single situation. So I was one of those people. I admit, early in my career, I took a case, or several cases, and didn't really know the science of DWI. And that also wasn't even a phrase at the time. And so I remember coming out of court one day with a client who was wearing heels during her arrest and had a .10 breath test at the time, and that was the limit. Now, of course, it's 08, and pled guilty. And on the way out, she said, couldn't we have done better than that? And I thought, probably, right? So that's when I decided to become, to study it. I loved law school. Figured, I didn't become a lawyer to be a scientist or a mathematician, but I figured I could handle some forensic science classes, and I learned the science behind DWI, and it's significant. I think there are countless lawyers do not really know even how these machines work or what the basis of the estimate of the breath testing is. How to defend a blood case, hundreds and hundreds of issues. And so I studied it, and 33 years later, I've been in some really fortunate situations, representing the defendant that set the standard for breath testing in New Jersey back in 2008 in a case called State versus Chun. And now currently, there's a new machine that they're pushing out in a case called State versus Cunningham. And that's my case too. So that's now just starting to percolate in the system. In fact, my weekend is going to be doing a motion on that to try and get some funds for experts in the case, because my client is the sole defendant in the case, and she's carrying the burden for everybody to sort of ratify this machine. So I also, one other thing, or just sort of interesting, I also got fortunate to get involved at a time where the internet, when Al Gore invented the internet way back then.
Thank goodness for Al.
Thank you. Not being political, I'm just saying, because I thought that was a funny thing. DWI is people don't like to talk about it, but it happens to, everybody. Fortunately, I have not been the subject of that, but that also is a discussion for the mighty MERP today. Anyway, it was great advertising opportunity with the internet, because people could really search on the internet for things that you don't necessarily want to talk about. Bankruptcy, DWI. Look, everybody that knows a personal injury lawyer or now a family law attorney, but these are the things that you don't really talk about. So I've been very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, to work hard and to really love what I do. And when you first asked me the question about my background story, I thought, what is she referring to? Because we're here certainly for a very interesting topic that I'm sure you'll outline here. But my background with regard to, you want to get into that now?
I mean, you can do it. I was going to, before we kind of jump into the topic while we're here, and we're here to talk about the New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program and detail the, sort of its origin story and where the services it provides. And also, I know, Evan, you're going to share your personal story and sort of how you, I'm going to say, had the New Jersey Lawyers Assistant Program, had someone work with you. I'm not sure if that was where you turned your personal story around. I think it was a part of your story. But I did want to talk about the whole idea of specializing in an area of law. And I thought it was interesting with your point that you decided that this was an area that you could do better. You know, couldn't I have done better? Couldn't you have done better? And you thought, I could have. And, you know, as a business owner, I have a lot of people talk to me about expanding my practice to different areas than I handle. And you know, I handle DUIs, but I say that I'm a criminal trial attorney. I'm a certified criminal trial attorney. And I'm done that for 27 years. That's all I've ever done. And so when people ask me to expand into divorce, into custody, into areas, I like to say I'm an expert in my area of law. And I have put all that time into becoming an expert. And I've also gone back and taught at my alma mater, Delaware Law School, and I've also taught at Rowan. And I like that expertise. I do not want to be a jack of all trades. I like being an expert in my area of law and having people call me to ask me about how I was able to resolve a case a certain way that they think they have similar matters and things like that, and putting the pieces together for my clients. So I think it's important that it's okay to be once, you know, I mean, I know you do you do a lot of municipal court, and you do
I just do
DUIs.
DWI. Yeah.
Yep.
And I actually I changed the name of my firm instead of just, you know, Levow and Associates or whatever it was over the years, to Levow DWI Law. And I did that for the very specific reason so that people would not call and say, hey, can you handle this will? Or, you know, I could say to my friend, well, I'm sorry, I can help you, but I just can't, because that's not what I do.
I can unless you get a DWI. If you get a DWI, I can assist you.
It's not the best, you know, representing your friends, but it does happen. So, you know, I wanted, it was a risk, obviously, to pigeonhole into just such a tight genre, as it were. But as it turns out, there's plenty of work to go around.
So let's talk about New Jersey LAP, which is the New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program. I'm going to start with, when I used to hear New Jersey LAP, I really just thought about it as individuals who had alcohol issues or drug issues. That's really, and that usually if you were involved in New Jersey LAP, then, you know, your professional career probably was, that there was a problem, that there was going to be a major problem. So, Defne, do you want to, kind of break some of those myths and what is New Jersey LAP, and sort of, you know, what the myths are and what the reality of the program is now?
Of course. I think that's an excellent way to introduce NJ LAP, because in some ways those myths go to the origin story of NJ LAP. Speaking of origin stories, and although I've been with New Jersey Lawyers Assistance for a little over a year and a half at this point, that's one of the first things that I wanted to learn about, like, how did it even come to be? Because until seeing that position on LinkedIn, I'd never heard of a lawyer's assistance program. I'd worked with physicians' health programs. I'd worked with nurses helping nurses. I'd worked with programs with dentists. But I'd never heard that lawyers had a program that they could turn to. So the fact that I can, hopefully don't count on dates too much, but what I understand is that it goes all the way back to 1979, when the founder of New Jersey LAP, William Bill Kane, I believe he was 8, 9 months out of rehab, and he was joined with 16, 17 other attorneys to my knowledge. And they basically all agreed that there needed to be some kind of support system for people who had difficulties with alcohol or other substances and wanted to not lose their ability to work in the field, but it was also clear to them that they needed certain kind of support, lawyers helping each other. And I understand they approached the then Supreme Court Chief Justice, Justice Valence, and tried to get a program started, a confidential program where lawyers helped others. And it appears like about 13, 14 years of, trying one thing or another. And NJ Lab, by the time 1993 rolled around, I believe was one of the first programs in the country to actually be sort of fully formed. So New Jersey was seen as the model. So when you look at that kind of origin story and the length of time before NJ Lab was formalized, that lawyers concerned for lawyers worked behind the scenes, not necessarily under an umbrella of a confidential organization that was supported by the court, it's not surprising that people think, oh, this is the place where people with alcohol and drug problems go. However, back certainly end of 70s, 80s, 90s, the predominant thinking about why people developed addiction was it started with it's a moral shortcoming. There was a lot of it's a personal choice. It was understood from that lens. But as we became able to do more research, and as addiction as an illness, addiction and how it affects the brain, and what are some of the aspects of addiction that make it so difficult to treat? As we learned more and more about it, psychologists and medicine, all of us, the moral aspects of seeing addiction as a moral issue, a character issue, fortunately started getting redefined. And we also understood that addiction just wasn't a standalone thing. It was related to social, biological, psychological, environmental exposures. And because we know that the environment in which attorneys exist, the stress, the type of it's not okay to show any vulnerability type of belief makes it so much harder for people to come forth about addiction. We realize that you can't really even make a connection with people who want help from other lawyers, from other clinicians around their addiction, unless you address some of the systemic issues, some of the psychological comorbidities with it. You see a lot of depression and anxiety. You see other mood disorders. You see other addictive issues together. So it only made sense that NJ Lab and many other labs that were modeled after NJ Lab started moving towards more of a broad brush program, as we call them. So today we're very much about, if you needed help with substance use disorders, we're there. But we're also there for the entire domain of an attorney's well-being, whether it's social, emotional, occupational, spiritual, or physical.
Right. So I think following up on that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like the way you said, it used to be a character issue or a moral deficiency or some sort of issue. And I saw Evan's piece on that. And so I'm going to ask Evan, when you heard that, what was your reaction to it? I mean, I saw the smirk or the reaction to it regarding addiction. because I think we know now, we're all wise enough to know now that, you know, that the idea that you could deal with addiction without mental health is impossible, you know, that they're so wrapped up together. Evan?
So many ways to address them. It's well, so you probably can't see this. That is was a
Zoom
wall
call?
hanging.
No?
It was no. There's a wall hanging. I was up in Wayne Municipal Court this morning, and all these people are people that have died from overdose.
I grew up in
not,
Wayne, you know that. So
right?
now I'm like, oh, send me the picture.
Yeah, I will. And then on the outside, it was overdose awareness. I have to do my Facebook post later today. But it's so multifaceted. I know we're talking about professional, but boy, getting caught up in drugs or alcohol and letting it rule how you do things it's very personal. All the stories are different, of course. But to answer what you're saying, look, especially with a professional, to have an issue with alcohol or drugs that is problematic in their life in any way, not necessarily just professionally or professionally at all, but affecting relationships and everything about somebody's life, physically, emotionally, mentally, etc. It is a stigma, or was a stigma, or is a stigma. And I'll answer it this way as well. You and I have talked about today and things in general. We've done some other work together on this, and so I had an issue, and that's why I'm here today. And we'll talk about that as we go. But I was on a Zoom a couple months ago, and I came out and said, "Hi, my name's Evan. I'm an addict." And that was it. I talked about, and we'll talk about today. But somebody must have gotten back or gotten around to somebody, and that's fine. I don't care. I'm fine. I am comfortable with my situation from the past and certainly the present. But somebody said to somebody else, "Hey, did you know that Levow is an addict?" Well, I mean, I guess I am. I mean, I'm an addict for a whole bunch of different things, but I was or am a drug addict. I'm 100% sober. I've been sober for years. But I did have an issue. So it's, once an addict, always an addict. I like to eat, all kind of different things. But, the point being, somebody heard about, and I'm here today, with Defne and with you to try and help people, sort of come to the center of it and to know that it's okay to admit that there are issues and to address the issues and know that it's going to be okay. But somebody said when I was doing the CLE for attorney wellness, oh, he's currently using. Well, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And regardless, but people are afraid. People are jealous. I don't know. People are ignorant about these sort of things, and so even currently, there's an issue. I'm certainly taking a risk by being here today.
So, Evan, do you want to share your story and the real story so that any of the rumors or whispers that people are saying that are false can be corrected, and you can sort of share your experience and not only your experience, but maybe connect it to New Jersey LAP if you can?
Sure. So I'm not sure where I got cut off, but or we had a little technical glitch. This is honestly, of course, the first time I'm really talking about this in a forum directly related to this. I've certainly presented at meetings. I've done the CLE. I did a CLE in San Diego for the DUI Defense Lawyers Association a few years ago on the subject. So, but telling my story now is pretty big, but it's important, and it's important because I'm hopeful that it can help others that are facing what I faced and facing the issue of coming out, so to speak. I don't know if that's certainly the right term, but of
No, I
coming.
think it's coming out. It's sort of acknowledging it. You have an amazingly you have a professional career and also a professional image, and the Mighty MERP podcast is focused in New Jersey. We're talking about New Jersey well-being, and I understand that it's hard in some ways to share it. It's almost sharing an intimacy or something very personal. And maybe California was easy because how many New Jersey lawyers were there?
Well, I was presenting in front of some of very close friends, and it got very emotional. I didn't make it through the first 5 minutes without crying. But there's a lot of space between my use and now. So I feel comfortable and confident to be able to talk about it. It is an emotional thing at any point in time. But it's so hard for a professional or a lawyer, a doctor, anybody, to have an issue and then worry about coming out, about coming clean and accepting help. And that's the biggest issue of all, to surrender and accept help from family, friends, strangers in AA or NA. So I had an issue with narcotics, with cocaine. I certainly liked other things as well. No other kind of drugs, but marijuana. I love a good Scotch. Wine. But I originally started with the cocaine a long time ago, really for energy purposes. We are running around the clock, us lawyers. Go to the office, go to court, do the paperwork, meet with clients, deal with anything. And it's certainly not limited to lawyers, but that's sort of how it started. I needed a couple extra hours in the day. Look, I'm not advocating this. I'm certainly not proud of it. I'm very proud of where I am now. Multiple years clean and sober. I do nothing. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I certainly don't do any drugs. Anything prescriptive is non-narcotic. So I'm very comfortable and super grateful. We were just away at another seminar this past weekend where the lawyers were drinking heavily, and I was so glad not to be part of that. Not to be part of it, but not to be doing the drinking, saying the things that they were saying or doing, and then waking up the next day and feeling the effects. So, anyway, it was recreational. And then it got worse. It got all consuming. And, look, that stuff changes your everything. Metabolism, changes your brain. And, I needed, intervention. And, it was becoming clear to, my family and to some friends that I had a problem. I was able to mask it very well, which most addicts are very good at, because you got to be. You don't want people to know about this stuff. You don't want the help. So I had a friend another lawyer who said, "Look, let's go. Let's go to New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program." I'm like, "What is that?" I
Did
don't
you
want to
think you
go.
had a problem at the time?
By that point in time, yes, I knew that it was running my life, essentially. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, you don't want to admit that. You say, what kind of person in our profession? I'm sure, Defne, uh, it's all type A person. Right? It's all these people that are always in control and, business owners and, um, with good reputations that the rest of the world would have no idea what's going on. And I, being a DWI lawyer, there's an extra added irony, just with the intoxication issues. You know, People didn't know. There's nobody in the profession that knew I had an issue except
Mm-hmm.
for my close friend, who was another lawyer. I'm good friends with my wife, and he came in. There was an intervention, which did not go well. Um, but so I did come to lawyers assistance program voluntarily. Um, my friend said, "Come on, let's just hear what they have to say." And that's kind of all I needed. I couldn't, nobody could take me anywhere. I wasn't going to go into rehab at that time. I wasn't going to admit that I really even had an issue or a problem because,
Mm-hmm.
wow, what's that going to do to my reputation, to my practice, to my life, to my clients, to my. Just keep filling in the blank. And it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying, debilitating to the extent that I didn't want help. I can
Mm-hmm.
handle this. I got it. I got it. I got it. It's one of my favorite phrases all the time is from Cat in the Hat. It's fun to have fun, but you have to know how. I figured I was knowing how, right? I can manage my stuff, and um, but then I couldn't, and it became a problem at home. And look, and am so good at what I do. I'm not sound arrogant. I'm not trying. I know,
It's
I
okay.
know, I
There's a
know my
fine
stuff.
line between
Yeah,
confidence and arrogance, and you can be confident in your skill and proud of the skill of the work and not it be arrogant. Although I'm going to say confidence. Be
yeah,
confident.
thank you.
Thank you.
Um, I'm good at what I do. I know my stuff. I literally had no problems with any ethical issues with clients. I never had a problem with the bar. I never messed up a case because
Do you think
I can
I was
do
gonna,
this like the back of my hand. I
do
know
you
this stuff.
think you could do it with a broken heart? Sorry. Well, I had to throw a little Taylor Swift in there. Do
Thank you.
you think that the only people that really knew were the people so close to you that
Yeah.
sort of knew you in a way that you could put the act on in front of your clients or in front of judges and you could play
100%. 100%. There's a fine line here about what to share and what not to share. But I can tell you there were instances that I'm not proud of. But again, I didn't f up. I didn't mess up a case. I didn't screw anything up for a client. I wasn't disrespectful or inappropriate with anything in court. Fortunately, right? I mean, that's not the case for everybody in that situation. So
but it
I
did
have
affect your marriage, right? And it affected
well,
your personal relationships
and it
and
did affect my business, right? So yes, 100% affected my relationships everywhere in the office, and certainly probably with clients. Maybe I was not as patient as I should have been. Um, any number of things, but I because I've done a deep dive into the sort of ethics of what I experienced, and I was very concerned about that. And that's one of the issues that LAP Lawyers Assistance Program addresses for you or with you. If you go in voluntarily, and definitely you can tell us the parameters. If you go in voluntarily and you start to address the issues directly, it's a very positive step if there are any ethical issues. Well, that was kind of one of the things that did not marry me to LAP at the time because I didn't have any ethical issues. Um, And I wasn't willing to take the risk of outing myself at that point in time and get into a program and address my issues.
So let me stop you here, Evan, because now I'm going to go to and ask you about the confidentiality concerns if you go to New Jersey Lab, because the goal of the podcast is for people to sort of see and be inspired by you, Evan, in some ways, to see that it's, if you have issues or problems, it's not the end of your career, but also to open up, our community and lawyers in New Jersey to know that New Jersey Lab has this availability. And my understanding is there is confidentiality to a point with New Jersey Lab. There is confidentiality. I would ask you to kind of expand on that.
Absolutely. There is complete confidentiality, not to a point. It's like confidentiality no matter what. We do not report to anyone, anybody, period.
It's a huge, because, Evan, you mentioned it about the ethics, it's such a concern for those who listen that are not attorneys. There is an Office of Attorney Ethics. Lawyers can lose their job lose their license to practice for different reasons, not usually for substance issues, but substance or gambling issues that lead to embezzling of your client's money, you're going to be disbarred for that. So, but there's a huge concern of for all of us to have an ethics violation against us.
Right. So I was very comfortable going to LAP initially with my friend and meeting with somebody. It was very understanding. It was very relaxed. You come in, you're all nervous, and I was all nervous and worried about everything, but they made me feel extremely comfortable, knowing that it is totally confidential. That wasn't really my concern. My concern, but that's why I went, because I knew it was confidential. Mm-hmm. My concern was just admitting that I had a real problem and then ultimately addressing it, because then I had to address it, and I did. But it took, I'd have to think back on the timing, but it was not shortly afterward when I did start to address the issue. But I started the action with LAP, and it was extremely positive. And look, if I had the ability and the wherewithal to do it at that point in time, to really follow up with LAP, I wish I did. But that's not necessarily in the makeup of either an addict or a professional, and a professional addict.
Right.
Because it's the denial, it's not an issue type of thing. I can manage my fun, which you can't.
I'm handling it. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I got it.
Right. It took a breakdown, emotionally, physically, and almost mentally to say, I give up. Okay, take me. And that is not easy. And so hopefully, from what we're doing here, and what I would love to talk to anybody about these issues, one-on-one, of course, whatever, is to make somebody comfortable and aware that it doesn't have to get to a point of no return, or a point of, almost no return. You can address these things and be fine, be 100% fine.
Right.
Get the help that you need, therapy, medication if necessary, abstinence, ultimately. But it's so doable. I used the word before, surrender. That is such a concept that I wish I had just surrendered when my friend took me to LAP and said, you know what? Yeah, I've got an issue. I couldn't say at that point in time, hi, my name's Evan. That was not a definition I was willing to accept. It took a long time to do that. But had I done it then, and had I had maybe somebody like Defne or me talking and you moderating this to say it's okay and you can do it, And it's actually not the worst thing in the world for you to come and say, hey, my name is, and I've got a problem. Because LAP is the organization that can help you through it totally confidentially and not be something that's going to ruin your life, your practice, your everything.
Right. And as we all said, it's confidential, but more importantly, there's no reporting relationship. There's no, because I think that's one of the myths. Like, as you said, Evan, you had the belief that people went to NJLAP because they were having ethics issues and they were going there to save their career or their license. And I think it's, the language is so important that it's confidential and there's no reporting relationship. So there really isn't a connection between the Office of Attorney Ethics. There's no relationship between NJLAP and the Office of Attorney Ethics is the best way to say it.
You don't necessarily trust that initially, but I can tell you from going there, being there, having that experience, and then having the alternate experience of really having to do it on my own. Wow, I wish I would have taken the benefits of the lawyer assistance program to help guide me through all these issues. It would have been much easier, but I had to figure it out for myself.
You wanted the long, hard road.
Yeah. Somebody told me, my therapist told me, when I wasn't ready to admit these things, I was in therapy. And he said, look, I need you to do a 12-step program to address this, or I can't work with you anymore. And I said, 12-step program? First of all, it's not a problem. Second of all, I don't talk to my best friend about this issue. I try not to talk to my wife about it. Why am I going to talk to a bunch of strangers? Well, no, you need to learn the skills and such. And I'm like, can I use the gesture? I was like, no. You can cut that out if you want. I was like, I'm not going to do it. And I literally got fired by my therapist.
Which is hard to do, Well,
I was pretty good at the process there. In doing it, I was, so it's those things that if that doesn't tell you that you've got an issue or a problem, ain't nothing with it. When the entire world starts to say X and you're saying Y, there's a reason they're saying X. Not political issues, of course, but you're upside down and you need the help. So I wish I had somebody like this to be able to confide in and see that it's okay to do and that it is totally confident.
Right. So let me ask Defne, do you think these are the same concerns with people reaching out? I mean, today for New Jersey LAP, or do you think, I feel like New Jersey LAP has expanded so much beyond just addiction and alcohol issues. I think that you've reached out to law school students right at the beginning. So lawyers coming out, young lawyers who really are struggling the most, I think. And I say they're struggling. It's not just me saying it. The Putting Lawyers First task force has said young lawyers have the highest level of stress, highest level of anxiety, maybe they're more likely to report than lawyers that have been around for a significant amount of time. But but with that being said, my question to you is, what Evan is saying, does that resonate with the people that are reaching out to New Jersey LAP?
Well, there's several layers to look at to be able to answer that question completely. One, I think this is the most important message for people to hear. Ambivalence is part and parcel of addiction. So you have ambivalence no matter what. When you think you have a problem, when you've admitted it, when you admitted it yesterday, but maybe not so much today. And really, we know from treatment research, that every different phase of one's working on their addiction, is what I prefer to call it, because it's ongoing work. A lot of work goes into understanding the problem, surrendering, getting whatever kind of support you need. Then you get the first kind of support, and then maybe you need the other things like Evan was talking about. Sometimes you may make it to a therapist, but then you're resistant to 12 step. There's ambivalence every part of it, right? So if anybody's thinking that like there's somehow going to be someone who says, oh, yes, oh, thanks for bringing it up to me, I now see it in entire clarity. Yes, I have a problem and I'm going to get some help and stay on that path. It just cannot happen. It's not in the nature of the illness. Nature of the illness is, but this is so good. I mean, there's obviously real chemical reasons why our brain just says, but why can't we have that? But why can't I keep on doing this? Right? So that's why when it was not understood that this is something that changes your entire brain, then affects your behavior, then affects everything else in your life, and then, the cycle goes on, but rather seen as like a character defect. Like if you're strong enough, like you can just say, okay, I have a problem and I'll stop. Like if you believe that that's why people get addicted, then of course you're going to believe that, well, like obviously you weren't strong enough, that you didn't stop. So getting back to your question, fortunately, because now there is a lot of research, we have the capabilities of like seeing inside your brain and seeing what happens when you actually quit substances, seeing why cravings happen, seeing what needs to happen for brain to repair certain connections that it has lost because of long-term use of substances. Because we now understand the phenomena of addiction better, hopefully there is some lightening of that stigma. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with professionals who are generally pretty good at setting goals and attaining them, the idea that like they cannot figure out how to fix this issue, that even if they're accepting that it's an issue, it's very difficult to admit. It's difficult to admit that you have an addiction, but it's almost more difficult to admit that like, but I have actually accomplished everything I have set my mind to. And this happens not just with substances. Years ago, when I worked at a weight management division of a large hospital, I had a client who was an incredibly successful professional, not an attorney, some other field. Let's just leave it at that. He had awards and accolades, and he had like made like really a lot of money. And he was suffering from very debilitating obesity, had a lot of health impacts, and he had incredible shame around this. He refused to go to award ceremonies to get an award that he was given as like a star of his field, because he said, I feel like if I stand on stage looking like someone who couldn't take care of himself, no one's going to like think that I am worthy of this award. So I've seen this everywhere, right? When you're a professional, when you're very successful, it's this sort of false belief that like, what do you mean I can't manage something else? So getting back to your question, today we know that someone could be, a very strong-willed person and in so many other things in their life, but it has nothing to do with a strong will. This is an illness that affects your body, your brain in every kind of way. So with that understanding, I think there is definitely more openness. This generation going into the practice of law, I always say when I go to law schools, they're definitely very fortunate with regards to going into this field where there was someone at your orientation speaking to you. I was at law schools this whole last month. A lot of us from NJ and LAPs around the country, we were at law schools telling students, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You will have a moment across the career that you'll have a hard time, not just with addiction, but any other kind of issue. So, yes, there is more help seeking, but anyone who comes in to seek help for addiction, they're going to have ambivalence. That's the first thing that you need to understand.
But I also I know we've been focusing on addiction. New Jersey Lab handles mental health issues, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and you mentioned the lawyers coming in or starting law school. I think this whole generation of new lawyers is going to be able to put better words and acknowledgement. And I say this as a parent of, I have still 3 kids in college and 1 in grad, but my college students talk to me about how they talk about mental health so openly in college regarding wellness and what they need to feel well mentally, not just physically, in a way that I think people of my generation just are not comfortable doing. I mean, I think we're comfortable in joking of like my therapist and Evan, I do the same thing. I'm like, my therapist has said that I'm allowed to feel these feels. Like I needed a therapist to tell me at 53 that it's okay to feel things that should obviously be okay to feel, right? And
sometimes you need permission.
You just need permission. But I do think it's part of I think there's something unique about lawyers. We take care of other people problems. We are fixers. We are helping people. Usually, it doesn't really matter what area of law you think about it. When you're representing someone, they have a problem that they're coming to you to fix. And I say, like, I can fix things. I get things done. And there's a lot of power and energy to that. And yet there's also a draining of it, an emotional draining for lawyers when everyone is, I guess, pulling from us or taking from us, which is why I think lawyers' wellness and this idea of having the resources is so important, because you said it as you said it to the law students. Like, it might not be addiction, but there's going to come a time in everyone's life where there is going to be an emotional toll. It does not mean that it's clinical to the point that you need medicine or, but life is hard,
Absolutely.
and, there's going to come a time where you're going to be overwhelmed or anxious or, depressed, or going through a life cycle, which, I've talked about briefly, but, I took care of my mom for 2 years who had dementia while having 4 kids that I'm still helping guide into adulthood. Who knew? Nobody told me. Did anyone tell us that, it's hard being a caregiver to everyone?
Absolutely. I have a great story actually that happened last week where I was connected last year to a law student, and the person who facilitated that connection was actually one of their professors. So, that tells you the importance of the whole community addressing this, right? So she was a student who was not from the state and had, obviously, along with the first year of law school, she also was away from family supports, but just sort of like she was fish out of water in every which way, right? And she needed, it seems to the professor that she might need some additional support. So she connected us. So we had a few sessions. We talked about, a few meetings around, how to socialize, how to deal with stressors of law school while trying to establish a new life. Just a few meetings. Then things got busy for the student, and we did occasionally, hi, how are things going? Kind of, it becomes a relationship, right? It's not an ongoing therapy per se. That's not what we provide, but it's a place that you can reach out to. So just last week, I get this phone call, like really stressed out phone call. And the student says, I started a law clinic and I'm like really, really overwhelmed. I just feel like I'm going to mess up everything, just the usual, right? Like we all went through that in our first like big, like real experience. And I was just like fascinated by the fact that she actually had like the ability to remember to call. She reached out. We just had a 20-minute phone call. I was like, okay, let's just take a deep breath first. Tell me what's going on. She had all the resources she needed anyways. And I said, I'm so glad you called. She said, me too, because I would have completely spiraled out. And that was it. I don't know if I'll hear from her anytime soon. I don't need to. But that's the idea. We all get overwhelmed. And to know that there's someone you can pick up the call instead of saying like, oh, that's it. I'm an imposter. I shouldn't have even been here. I mean, everybody knows that we say these things when we're younger and getting into the field. So that's what I love about working with Angela, because you really can not only touch people's lives individually, whether it's about addiction or just, what was I even thinking getting into law school? Like, I don't think I can survive this. And then ultimately, like, improving the community on every domain.
Well said. Well said. It's funny. So I'm going to ask Evan my lawyer question. I have interns every semester. They go into court, and I say these are my Stockton University interns for the semester. And then I say now to the lawyers, don't discourage, they want to go to law school. So only positive, because I
Why
have
would
so
you
many.
even think about
Exactly. I have so many lawyers that are saying, you're not in law school yet, don't go. And I think, I don't know, I think there's so much positive about being a lawyer. And for the most part, I would say I love being a lawyer. I don't know if I could do it for 20 more years at this point. I've done it, about 28. So 20 more years seems like a lot, but I love it. What would you say to a young person, even through everything you've been through, about attending or going to law school?
I love what I do. I love where I am right now. I mean, sitting here with you, but just in life and having the experiences that I've had. I love everything about what I do. I have one associate. I've got 4 people that work with me. In addition, so I'm a small business. That can be have a lot of issues and have its own headaches, and practice law and practice research and family and just everything. Love all of it. So I'm 58. I will do this. I can't imagine not to. Yeah, I want to, relax a little bit, and I don't play golf. I don't do drugs anymore. But I love what I do. So I will keep it. So going to law school was great. Learning the profession was great. So yeah, I'm not maybe I am the right person to talk to about something like this, because I just think it's fun and every aspect about it is cool. So I love helping people. I love being in court. It's almost not fair. I mean, but that's the best thing, because if you love what you do, if you thrive on what you do, you're going to do it well and you're going to excel at it. To not enjoy, I mean, if we're talking directly about lawyers or anything, any type of profession, pick the area that you're really interested in and you will thrive. If you don't, you might not.
Right. What I say to my students or my law interns now is It's a great education. You learn to think in a way that no other degree will teach you, to analyze and think the way lawyers think. If you're not sure if that's what you want to do, it's a lot of money to spend on something that you're not sure of. But if you're sure, then I say it's great. And I think I'm fortunate too, because I really do like what I do and I like my clients. I just think 20 years, I'll be almost 75, and that might just be too long, you know. So that's when I say I don't want to do it 20 years, just because I think it's a little bit of a young person's game, what you and I do. You're just young at heart.
Listen, the experience is great. It's a great leg up. Obviously, we're not here to talk about that, but as long as you love what you do, you're going to presumably or hopefully do it well, but you're going to enjoy doing it. And that's what matters. If you enjoy what you're doing, keep doing it. And
Right.
I don't see retirement anytime soon. Plus, I've got a couple weddings for kids in the future, so
Never ends. So let me ask both of you the final question of our conversation that I really enjoyed with both of you. Any final words? I'm going to start with Defne. Do you have any final words about New Jersey LAP that if you could, share and have, everyone here, what would you want to end with regards to New Jersey LAP and lawyers' wellness, I would say?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to what Evan said about going into NJ Lab, but not really, I believe you said like being married to it or sticking with it. I'd like to believe that even that one meeting, that one place to start, your best friends knew that there was a place to start, and we're not the place to end. We're really a place to start the conversation about if something is not working out, whether it's about why am I feeling sad all the time? Why am I feeling like I just don't any longer have a day that I actually feel like going to? I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling like I'm constantly overwhelmed. Whatever the issue is, NJ Lab is a great place to start thinking it through. It's sort of like we're part of the field of law. We understand all of the concerns that attorneys have. And we also serve judges. I mean, just to also make sure to mention that we understand what's at stake. We're really good at figuring out what's next. So if anything, I hope that people could take away that if we're not for you, then all you have done is waste a phone call. But give it a shot, right? And to actually say, what do do you know people who suffer with these things? What can I do? We're really good at providing resources. We're really good at approaching everything from a place of compassion. And that, among all of the other things that any kind of therapeutic environment provides for either addiction or mental health issues, is being able to connect with someone who's compassionate about what you're going through. Research tells us that's one of the main reasons why people stay in treatment. It may not be the same place, but we have a good understanding of what attorneys and judges and law students go through. I hope that people will allow us to just be part of your support system. We don't have to be the end all be all, but we are confidential. We're free. We're there, and we get what you're going through. So what's there to lose? I mean, you can just say, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a call. And if at the end of 10 minutes you don't feel like, we're going to be a good resource for you, no hard feelings.
Thank you. Evan, did you, anything that you want to, final words?
Well, so just to follow up directly on what Defne said, I went to LAP with my friend, and I think there was a follow-up phone call, I recall. but there was no tracking, there was no mail, there was not, it was up to me to
Mhm.
decide. And I'm sitting here thinking about it, the conversation was, hey, just checking in with you. If there's anything we can do, we're here for you. And that was it. And that was very comforting because I was not being tracked. I was not, my bar number wasn't out there. It was very personal and not, it wasn't scary at all. And, so it's such a great resource, which is why I'm here now.
Thank you.
And
And it
frankly,
means so much that you're actually um, endorsing us, and especially from someone who said, and I figured out another way of taking care of myself.
well, and I wish I had taken not advantage of, but taken advantage
Right.
of LAP, but I was so scared. I was terrified
Yeah.
of being out there and being seen by anybody, much less even the LAP, totally confidential. But I guess what I want to say, in conjunction with LAP and just overall, it's like relax, don't worry about it, don't be scared. Look, don't be scared. The hardest thing I did was resist. The hardest thing that I did was kept fighting, hiding, trying to maintain control of what was not controllable. I literally shouldn't be here right now. I can't tell you how grateful that I am. And it's because I was able to finally say, okay, I can't do this on my own. And there's no reason that you should have to do it on your own. It's not going to happen. You don't want to do it on your own. You're doing something else. But the help is out there, and it's safe. And that's the best. And there are people that do understand. And the hardest thing was just fighting it. The anxiety and the stress of being in the midst of the problem is debilitating. And that's ultimately what led to why I finally gave in. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't do the emotional part, the physical part, or the mental part. And I was just like, take me. I called my friend and he took me somewhere else. I went into a rehab and it worked.
Thank you, because very powerful words, Evan. The hardest part was the fighting. I really do appreciate you sharing. I know we've talked about this personally, and I think what you're doing is so brave. And I also think that it's so necessary for us to be able to know that there's help and that, I think, as you said, once you surrender, that's really in the end when I could see you breathe.
Right.
I'm telling you, it's a palpable relief when you finally say, okay, I can't do this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I need the help. I'm willing to accept it because the alternative ain't good.
Thank you both for joining me on Mighty MERP. Thank you for helping me kick off season 4. And I look forward to connecting with you guys soon.
Thank you for introducing us. It was very, very powerful to hear your story, Evan. And I agree with Melissa. It's so hard to share your story outside of rooms, outside of treatment settings. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mighty MERP podcast. This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.